Racism is an issue that has plagued this country since its inception, from slavery and the genocide of Native Americans to Jim Crow laws and internment camps. It has always been a part of U.S. history. Despite numerous federal and state laws enacted to prevent the repetition of past atrocities, racism remains a problem today. Racism is defined as any prejudice or discrimination against a person based on their race or ethnic group. While most people recognize this as morally wrong, many still unknowingly hold racist views. Anonymous social media data indicates that some individuals harbor significant racist attitudes. It's challenging to measure the extent of racism accurately since most people won't admit to being racist in polls. However, when people can remain anonymous online, they often reveal their true sentiments. Location-based monitoring of tweets and Google searches provides a reasonable gauge of racist attitudes. It's essential to remember that while these states may have many racist individuals, the majority of residents are not racist. If you're interested in more content on racial topics, such as the states with the highest black or white populations, let's aim for 5,000 likes. Here are the 10 most racist states in America. Number 10. Maryland. On the surface, Maryland doesn't appear to be very racist. It ranks as one of the least systemically racist states, with the 12th lowest income gap by race, and being the 11th most racially integrated state in terms of workplaces, schools, and voting booths. Therefore, it's surprising that 16.59% of Twitter accounts discussing race in Maryland used hateful or derogatory language. This is particularly unexpected since many researchers believe poor education is a major cause of racism, and Maryland is the 4th most educated state. However, given Maryland's racist past, it also makes sense. Interracial marriage was illegal here until 1967. Both Rising Sun and Thurmont, two small towns in northern Maryland, were once home to KKK chapter headquarters. Despite Maryland's nickname being the Free State, it was actually one of the last states to outlaw slavery, not doing so until November of 1864. While very few people today act on their hateful views, with only 11 hate crimes based on race or religion reported in 2020, the dark history of racism still lingers, especially in the more rural parts of the state. Number 9. West Virginia. There are numerous Reddit posts from people of color who express fear about even visiting West Virginia due to its reputation as one of the most racist states. Our data somewhat supports this, as 16.78% of tweets from West Virginians about race contained hateful rhetoric. Unlike in Maryland, where racism is often subtle, many West Virginians are openly racist. Multiple Reddit users report frequently hearing white people use the N-word, and others advise people of color to keep quiet and avoid bars, as racist views combined with drunkenness can lead to dangerous situations. One Redditor specifically noted, "There is a lot of racism here. I know some of y'all are going to tell me you don't see it, but I know you do. When we have to tell people to wear WVU gear to blend in and to stay away from bars for their safety, that's a big racism problem." However, it's also important to acknowledge that most West Virginians are incredibly welcoming. With 97.4% of the population being white, many people, particularly in rural areas, have never encountered someone of a different skin tone in their entire life. This unfamiliarity likely contributes to their racist views. On a brighter note, West Virginia boasts the 10th lowest employment gap by race and the 2nd lowest income gap. However, this might be due to the lack of well-paying jobs, meaning there can't be a significant gap when nearly everyone is struggling financially. Number 8. Arkansas. With signs like these and a former sheriff of Arkansas County caught on camera using racial slurs, including the N-word, it's no surprise that Arkansas is on this list. However, it is surprising that it's only one of 2 southern states to make the cut, especially since many first-hand accounts claim the South has the most in-person racism. This might be because the majority of the racist population in southern states is older, and many older people don't use Twitter. Overall, 16.83% of tweets discussing race in Arkansas did so in a hateful way, which shouldn't be shocking considering the state is home to the largest number of hate groups per capita and the modern-day Ku Klux Klan, headquartered in Zinc. Speaking of Zinc, it's only a 20-minute drive from Harrison, Arkansas, which many consider the most racist town in America. While not everyone in the town is racist, and many of the younger generation are working to change its reputation, many older residents are proud of their hateful views and openly showcase them to the world. Number 7. Kansas. Kansas is the first state on our list where data indicates a systemic problem with racism. The income gap by race is the 34th worst in the country, and in terms of racial integration, it ranks 37th. Having traveled extensively across Kansas, I'm honestly surprised it didn't rank even lower. In Wichita, for instance, it feels like there's a literal line dividing Black, Latino, and white neighborhoods. The same goes for the Kansas City suburbs, where, as one Redditor put it, the older generation has decided that the presence or even the perception of minority influx explicitly causes a loss of property value and desirability. Another Reddit user from rural Kansas claimed, "You'll definitely hear unkind comments regarding minorities, particularly illegals and Muslims. It's understandable that many of the elderly hold racist views, as some were alive during the era of Jim Crow laws. Unfortunately, some of that racism seems to have been passed down to younger generations, as 16.95% of all tweets referencing race in Kansas did so in a hateful or derogatory way." Number 6. Wisconsin. Outside of cheese consumption and cheering for the Packers, most non-Wisconsinites may not know much about the state. However, in 2020 alone, Wisconsin saw 74 reported hate crimes, highlighting a troubling reality. It ranks as the worst state in terms of racial integration and 43rd in terms of the income gap by race. The president of the Milwaukee Bucks publicly described Milwaukee as the most segregated, racist place I have ever experienced in my life. This sentiment is rooted in historical policies like redlining and blockbusting, which shaped suburbs such as Brookfield. Even Milwaukee's schools remained segregated until the 1970s. A Redditor from Brookfield shared their personal encounters. "Never in my 30 years have I experienced so much racism and prejudice. Despite sharing the same socioeconomic status and being highly educated, many in the community view all Black people as thugs. I've faced harsh stereotypes at neighborhood gatherings and have been unjustly stopped and pulled over numerous times." Testimonies like these underscore the disturbing statistic that 16.98% of tweets referencing race in Wisconsin were hateful, reflecting ongoing challenges with racial tension and discrimination. Number 5. Hawaii. Hawaii, often referred to as the land of rainbows, isn't colorblind, but the issues surrounding race might not be what you expect. While 17.06% of tweets referencing race in the state were derogatory, further investigation reveals that many of these comments stem from ignorance rather than malice. The prevalence of rap music and the absence of a substantial Black cultural presence contribute to this misunderstanding. As one Redditor explains, "You'll hear the N-word a lot on the Big Island, not from racists, but from people who grew up listening to rap and don't fully grasp the word's severity." Another user notes, "The racism you encounter here isn't hostile, but it's often very ignorant." Hawaii and the mainland have vastly different definitions of political correctness. Despite these cultural nuances, Hawaii stands out in terms of institutional racism metrics. It ranks as the least racist state with the lowest employment gap by race, the 8th lowest income gap, and top marks for racial integration in workplaces, schools, and voting booths. Number 4. Mississippi. It's true that Hawaii fares relatively well in institutional racism metrics, but unfortunately, the percentage of tweets mentioning race in a hateful way is still quite high at 18.59%. This contrasts sharply with Hawaii's positive indicators. Mississippi, the only Deep South state on this list, often faces perceptions of being one of the most racist regions in the country. While the study isn't flawless, it's notable that Mississippi has the 8th largest employment gap by race and the 12th largest income gap, despite having some of the lowest incomes in the nation. Last year marked a historic milestone when Mississippi voters chose to remove a Jim Crow-era law from their constitution for the first time. This provision, which aimed to prevent Black Americans from holding office, made Mississippi unique in its ability to deny election victories even when candidates received a majority vote. As a result, Mississippi has never elected a Black candidate to any statewide office, despite being the state with the highest percentage of Black residents in the country. Number 3, Maine. While workplace laws in Maine appear to actively combat racism, reflected in the state's 2nd lowest employment gap by race and 17th lowest income gap, racial issues persist due to significant racial homogeneity and rural isolation. With over 95% of Maine's population being white and much of it residing in rural areas, many Mainers have limited exposure to diversity, which often underpins instances of racism. One Reddit user illustrates this ignorance. People up here don't even realize they're being racist. For instance, when I bring Asian food for lunch, I often hear rude comments about rice or the ingredients being weird animal parts. Coworkers also make offensive ching-chong sounds, thinking they're funny but it's deeply hurtful. Additionally, there's an unusual prevalence of Confederate flags in Maine, despite its distance from the Confederacy, and instances where white residents casually use racial slurs and hold prejudiced views against the Somali immigrant community. This sentiment extends into the online sphere, with 19.25% of tweets about race using hateful or racist language, highlighting pervasive racial tensions despite legislative efforts. Number 2, South Dakota. Despite its proximity to Wyoming, which ranks as one of the least racist states according to the study, South Dakota undoubtedly deserves its place on this list. A significant 20% of tweets referencing race in the state are derogatory. Furthermore, South Dakota faces severe racial disparities with the 2nd worst employment gap by race and the highest income gap. According to WalletHub, it ranks as the 3rd most segregated state across workplaces, schools, and voting booths. What exacerbates these issues is South Dakota's demographic makeup, with only 84% of the population identifying as white and a substantial percentage identifying as indigenous. One Reddit user bluntly stated, "I have seen firsthand landlords and employers reject applicants solely based on Native American names and appearances. They openly admitted to doing it regularly." Many others shared similar experiences, including one individual who recounted their interview for a law enforcement position, where they were asked multiple times if they would pull over individuals solely because they were Native American, prompting them to leave the interview. South Dakota's troubled history of racism towards Native Americans persists to this day, reflecting ongoing systemic challenges despite neighboring states' more positive standings. Number 1, make sure you leave a like and subscribe, and let me know what you think the most racist state is. But without further ado, Number 1, Delaware. Delaware's unexpected appearance on this list with 21.4% of tweets about race being derogatory certainly raises eyebrows. In contrast, Vermont stands out as the least racist state with only 6.96% of such tweets being hateful. This stark contrast highlights a wide spectrum of attitudes across America. While Vermont sets a positive example, Delaware's high percentage is surprising given its smaller size and relatively lower profile. It's a notable statistic, albeit not one Delaware might want to celebrate.